Hello, everybody. This is Scott McMeans on the Legacy Leaders. I'm so happy today. I've got Andrea Flack-Wetherald from the Center for Brave Communication. I'm pretty sure you're going to laugh your ass off on this one because she has a really interesting story. She started off in an industry you would not think of to have her end up be the head of a business that she's heading up right now. So before we get into all that, I'm going to let Andrea kind of introduce herself. Andrea, the microphone and camera are yours. Give
All
us a
right.
little bit of insight into how you got to be on this podcast with me today.
Yeah. So I started the Center for Brave Communication after starting out in social work, finding my way into comedy, producing and performing comedy for a while, never shutting up about how meaningful improv was to me, and then accidentally starting a business where I taught improv skills for handling difficult conversations. Um, do you have any improv experience? I don't think I asked you this when we talked before.
Um, I've been on stage in high school. I did some stupid stuff in college for fraternity days, but never really done any improv stuff.
Okay, so maybe for you, but also for any of your listeners that aren't familiar, improv is a form of live comedy where everything is made up on the spot. So oftentimes people think of improv, and they think of Saturday Night Live or maybe going to see a stand-up comedian. Those are also forms of live comedy, but the difference is that those jokes have been written ahead of time and memorized and practiced and really refined for delivery and things like this. Where improv, you get out onto the stage, the lights go down, they come back up, and everything is made up after that, and nobody's going to save you until your time is done. And the way that you're able to do that successfully, the times that it's not an embarrassing train wreck at least, um, are when you are staying present in the moment, listening to other people's ideas, um, really approaching all the different ways that the scene changes and unfolds and surprises you, and you're interpreting all of that with a lens of curiosity instead of judgment. And your job is to just stay open, stay open, stay open, keep listening, keep being brave, keep putting yourself out there, but also measuring out in your head, does the scene need me right now? Because maybe it doesn't. They say a good improviser notices when he or she is not needed on stage. So there's all of these skills that even just seeing your head nod, you can see how they are transferable off stage, right? Like in your
Yeah.
life. Um, so I just in my experience of learning improv and learning really it felt like immersion therapy and not having control over the situation and just
What an interesting
really.
way to describe it, immersion therapy. But I understand where you're going from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone who likes to have plans on plans on plans. And so seeing the safety of letting it surprise you, and seeing the joy even and the delight of what happens when we build something together that neither of us were expecting, and can we stay open to each other to believe that that's possible? Um, all of that was just deeply meaningful to me, and I loved it. I loved it for the joy of it and the fun of it and the silliness of it, but I also loved it for the ways I could see that it was making me, a better person and a happier person and a more well, just a healthier partner to my husband. And in time, when I became a mother, I could see the many, many ways that it was helpful to me there. And because I was always talking about it, people started asking me to come speak at their thing. And before long, I realized, I can do more than 90 minutes of fart jokes with people, right? Like I come from this background of intervention methodology research and social work and mindfulness and looking at how do we support behavior change. And um, anyhow, so in time, over the years, a more formal curriculum has been built where we specifically work with people that are navigating their company through a season of change. And we've built out these series of trainings to help people understand how do you prepare for, engage in, and recover from the conversations that build trust as you're navigating change.
Yeah, I love this conversation because from our previous conversation, one thing that really rang true in my head is you made the comment of improv is nothing more than feeling and being in the moment with your scene partner and
Mhm.
having that exchange go. back and forth. So it's always moving forward as opposed to falling apart. So you support
Hmm.
each other, you charge against each other. There's this ebb and flow, this push and this pull, but it's always together moving forward as opposed to
Hmm.
argumentative.
Hmm.
And I think a really good lesson that most businesses could learn from is how to instill that type of culture into their own business, right? So instead of constantly fighting, it's let me take a step back and listen and see what's transpiring, and then how do I contribute? Because as you said before, you may not be needed right now. The best thing you can do is just sit back and listen. And when it's ready, now you can start improving, but you're actually just being a helpful manager or leader or contributor to a scene or work environment, however you want to put it. But it's a very similar but yet different perspective on how to be a really good business. I love this conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I love improv for all of those reasons also. It's a fun way to practice the skills that just make a huge difference in our personal lives and professional lives. I'm always telling people to look for improv classes in their city. You know, whenever I'm with a client, I'm like, I love this, and improv is incorporated into our work. We teach the skills, and if we're on site long enough for like a retreat or a situation like that, to where we can play improv games with people if they want to. I love that. But I'm always like, take an improv class because what you really need are the reps. This is what I'm telling people. I started out just doing these like 90-minute improv workshops, but nothing's going to change in 90 minutes. You know, what
Yeah.
you need is the experience of failing, like bombing really hard and then going back again. Like that's improv absolutely can change your productivity as a salesperson, networker, fundraiser, leader, new person on the team working up the courage to speak up, all these different things. Improv can help with it, but not in 90 minutes. You got to get some more reps going on that, you know? So we found our niche on what we really like to do, and I decided to stick there.
Well, I think what you're making comment to is get your reps, cut your chops, however you want to say it. You're telling people to exercise this unbelievable skill that we all have inside. We want to contribute. We want to be a part of something. We just don't know how to do it because we're either afraid or we're not skilled. But just jumping into the environment and really working off another player, it gives you the ability to contribute in such a way that it's growing and it's morphing into something different. I'm not saying you need to get inside a business and change everything the way you do things. I think
Hmm.
what you're talking about is educating people on how to best communicate and realize that I don't need to know everything. I just need to be a part of this and engage and communicate and open yourself to the idea that somebody may have a better contribution than I do right now, and that's okay. Let them take the stage. And then when it's ready
Hmm.
for me, I jump in,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, the thing that I just love is that all of these skills that are inherent to improv, people are relying on always in their work. Like they
Mhm.
need these skills in so many ways. And it's one thing, for a trainer to come in and say, what's really important is balancing out how much time you're talking and how much time you're listening. What's really important is for you to be able to listen to what someone's saying without just trying to plan what you're going to say next. What's really important is to make sure that you're staying open and thinking, what does the company need right now? What does the team need right now? Not just trying to force your agenda because you had a good idea and you're freaking bummed that it's not coming to fruition. A trainer can say that. You can say that, but when you do improv, it's a whole nother level of learning to practice what that skill feels like, to practice that restraint. There are improv games where, for example, one of the ones that I love, which anyone who's listening, I do not own any of these games. Nobody owns them. Please look them up on the internet and do them at a staff training. One of the ones that I love, we call Words of Wisdom. It's also called Proverbs, and you go around the circle and you build a never before heard, word of wisdom, one word at a time. You get what I'm
Got
saying?
it.
Like, yeah, this is such a gorgeous game for practicing that skill of restraint, for practicing that skill of letting it unfold. I might have said if, and maybe I wanted to say, if you don't listen carefully, you will fail. Maybe that's the idea I had in my head. But the next person says, gorillas. And you're like, if gorillas, what? Now the next person's going to say, find And then maybe we're like, if gorillas find you in the night, run. Well, that's a whole different piece of wisdom, right? Like we found that organically. But
Yeah.
but my point is that in those moments where you feel the draw, like you really want to strong arm it back to your original idea, or you check out and you're not listening because you're like, I'm scared to speak up. When it's my turn, I'm just going to say karate or whatever, you know. It'll be
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
obvious if you did that, right? So it's just such beautiful, simple practice. Stay in the moment. Listen to
Yeah.
what's unfolding. Be willing to say the unsexy or unfunny word if it's your turn to just say and or the, if that's what's going to make it make sense. You know,
Yeah.
there's just this humility, this beautiful, but it's so fun. It's so fun to do. It doesn't feel heavy-handed.
Well, I think what you're talking about is finding your own way to contribute without overpowering, finding
Hmm.
your way to contribute without demeaning or putting somebody in a spot where they're not prepared to be in. It's always moving forward. And the words of wisdom game that you're making comment to, I think it projects people's minds. First off, they're going to be scared shitless to do it, right? They're like, I don't want to do this. And then once you get into it, like, oh my God, this is so much fun. I can't wait for my turn. But the person right before you can go so different direction. All of a sudden, you're like, okay, wasn't thinking of that. Now I got to say something different.
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
what I think what the best part about what you said is in my head, no matter what happens, I'm going to say karate. Well, karate makes no sense in this situation right now, so I can't say it. Okay, so I actually have to think and listen to, all right, I'm one, two, okay, I'm up next, but the story is evolving to, okay,
Yeah.
Doritos. That makes complete sense in the storyline, right? As opposed to
Hmm.
just forcing something in. And I think that's what you're trying to create with your business Center for Brave Communication is being brave enough to stand in the moment and take in what's necessary to be better.
Mm.
And that's
Yeah, I
what's so
love
huge
that.
about this, right? It's
Yeah.
teaching people to think differently. And what I know about businesses right now is the most progressive, most innovative companies are the ones that are willing to take a chance and be different. The ones
Mm.
that stay stagnant and always do things, what are those six worst words? This is how we've always done it. Like they don't know how to do anything different. So they always follow the old blocking and tackling. But the blocking and tackling they've been doing, Andrea, for years has gotten them to this point right now, but it's
Hmm.
never going to get them to a different level. And they
Hmm.
believe all I have to do is keep grinding away. What we're trying to talk about here between what you do from an improv perspective and then the education part and training that you do is I will teach you to be different thinkers so you can go to the next level as opposed to keeping this mundane reality that you have right now. Right? I think that's what's really cool.
Yeah, I mean it's getting to that next level and you know on this deeper place of it though is that the same skills that we're teaching them about walking into brave conversations of any sort, you know, maybe it's because there's disagreement, maybe it's because somebody, I mean, anytime you have human adults working together, at some point they're going to piss each other off. Like it's not a if, like that is what happens when, if we're being real in our collaboration and we're not being nicey, no one wants to say the real thing. No one wants to say
Mhm.
their real idea because we don't want to make any waves. If we're not doing that bullshit and if we're actually collaborating and saying our real ideas and speaking up, we're going to say the wrong thing at some point. We're going to hurt each other and there won't be a misunderstanding. We just were angry and we said something that was unprofessional or whatever,
Right.
you know, and people are all on different places in their own growth journey. We're all human people carrying with us limiting beliefs that we were taught from our parents or our you know, just life. So when you have this situation, we're going to hurt each other. We're going to get it wrong. And we need to be in right relationship if we want to collaborate well. If we want enthusiastic collaboration, we need to have what I call resilient trust, where we can recover quickly when this happens. We don't try to avoid it because,
Yeah.
and I know that that might sound some kind of way to some people, but what I don't mean, just go ahead and hurt each other. It doesn't matter. That's of course not what I'm
No.
saying. Certainly, certainly. It's just that the more we aim for perfection and we set the bar so high, the scareder we're getting of each other. And this
Yeah.
is some of the conversations I've had with a lot of people who do culture training is in our desire to to be good, to just be good people, and to be respectful of one another. Of course, I believe in that. Of course, that's what I want.
Sure.
But in our effort to try and keep there from being a time that anybody feels hurt, it's really easy to then plant seeds of, first of all, condescension, like this kind of person isn't strong enough to handle the truth or whatever. That's not respect. That's condescending and hurtful. So if instead of trying to put all this pressure on us to be perfect, we instead equip our people for accountability, to speak up if they
Hmm.
have something that they need to say, to be receptive, to receive feedback well. There's an awful lot of feedback trainings about how to give feedback. Ours, we have one about giving feedback and one about receiving feedback.
No, that's a good point. I think most people get immediately defensive or will fall into I'm going to close up, I'm going to not contribute anymore because somebody hurt my feelings or offended me. And what you're trying to teach people is it's good to have a different experience brought to the table so we can have a diverse conversation about my experience or your experience, somebody else's experience. There's six people in a room. We all have a different experience as far as what we're trying to get done based on our own experiences in life past, our own training, our own skill set. But right in the moment, I bring something different to the table than the other five people do. So what makes me more important than any of the other characters or players in this improv we're doing? It's
Hmm.
everybody contributing at once. And because we have different experiences, that's what's going to make it better as long as we all understand and can sit
Absolutely.
back. And I love this resilient trust is we all trust each other to be contributing for the betterment of the scene. And again, I'm
Hmm.
going to replace the word scene with business, right? If
Hmm.
we're all
Hmm.
having that resilient trust, so we can contribute and allow this business to flourish because different ideas are being presented, it's a much different approach to how you want to run a business.
It
And
totally
training your
is.
staff to be open to this, I want to ask you about some of the challenges you face, but I can only imagine the pushback or the stone walling that takes place when you go into business that just doesn't get it, right? The owner or the person that wants all this training done, they're really hyped. They think it's going to be amazing. They bring you in, all of a sudden, two or three people are like, I could just see them standing like this, right? I don't
Yeah,
want to
I
do
mean,
this.
that's
I'm not
not
participating.
unusual. Because there's so much fear. Behind this is fear. You're
Yeah.
going to call me a racist. You're going to say, like, just this assumption of, like, you're coming in here with all these newfangled ideas. And even now, I'm being sort of silly about it because it's not like, Ebenezer Scrooge has ever been in the room. But there is this fear. The crossed arms and the
Yeah.
resistance is about, like, I don't know if I trust you or not. And my whole thing is really A, holding that person lightly and not needing to win over their approval. Because at the end of the day, the proof will be in the pudding. When we go forward and that person sees that they are valued and respected, and when that person sees, this is what I'm like preaching forever to the end of the ages, is that you don't have to win over every person to create to make a huge cultural difference. And there are specific ways that we can engage that person. So, one of the trainings, I love this one so much. It's called Encouraging Change. And it specifically is for whoever is within the company that might be working with Ted or whoever is the one that's like, meh, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do improv. I don't know who brought improv Barbie to the office, but I'm not up for this right now, Like, all right, Ted, do your thing over there, my man. Do your thing. But whoever is inside the culture that needs to have the real come to Jesus conversations with him about, like, look, are
Hmm.
you in or are you out? We have this idea of how these conversations go. That's like ultimatums, or can we bribe him enough or whatever.
Yeah.
But within the world that I came from, and when I was a social worker working on this research study, we were specifically looking at behavior change. And it was specifically focused on addiction and smoking. But in a lot of ways, our habits are kind of like addictions. Our resistance, our rigidity,
Yeah.
our go ahead.
No, you're bringing it down to that fear piece. And the other one is comfort zones. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to ever get outside their comfort zone. And I've done a lot of personal development stuff. And one of my favorite two things is they teach us about our brains, and our brains tell us because we're going to experience fear, we're not going to do that because we want to stay safe. So don't do
Mhm.
that. We're going to stay safe. The other one is I don't want to reach outside my comfort zone. So I'm going to stay in this anxiety riddled place because that's where I'm comfortable.
Mhm.
If you could somehow convince your brain that anxiety is nothing more than my brain telling me to be comfortable, and I'm never going to grow. I only grow if I break through my comfort zone. Your brain goes, yeah, just it's okay. Break through the comfort zone. Let's grow more. Let's get bigger. Let's grow.
Mhm.
Let's
Mhm.
change the way we think. If you can do those two things with your brain, you can get rid of as much fear as possible so you can move forward. And then when it comes to getting rid of some of the anxiety in your life, simply recognizing it's your brain telling you to stay safe and comfortable, you can then expand this way. It's just amazing what your brain can do for you. And this is all about breaking through those barriers that people have for whatever reason. They've pre-selected themselves to be safe and comfortable. And I get it. But you're never going to be bigger, better, stronger if you don't get out of those comfort zones and if you don't break through those fears.
And the way that we can help people do that is by not, so there's several things, and we don't obviously have time to get all the way into the training, but some of the things that I love most about it is that what social scientists have come to understand is if you're talking to a change resistant person and you're just listing out all the reasons why the change is good, all the reasons why it's necessary, all the reasons why they have to do it or else,
Uh,
humans are hardwired to play devil's advocate. So what you're going to do is create and initiate this endless loop of pushback.
Yeah.
They're going to keep poking holes in all the reasons why nuh-uh, you know,
Hmm.
and go back to their desk and either look for another job or just poison the water hole, so to speak, for everybody else culture-wise. So instead
Yeah.
of that, what we teach with motivational interviewing is stop telling them all the reasons why it's important and start asking more questions. And it's more complex than that and more precise than that because there are certain questions that we ask at certain times um, within this framework. Where we're eliciting change talk and we're listening for how they talk about the change to figure out where they at within the trans theoretical model. And instead of coaching to the finish line, by the end of this conversation, they will be the champion of change. They'll be the number one cheerleader for this. That's not realistic, but we
Right.
could maybe coach them to the next bucket.
The
And
next bucket. Yeah.
and just gaining a deeper understanding of where their perspective is. So you started out asking me like what happens when, you're in the room and there are some people who are resistant. Well, first of all, there are times that I have been able to just even in the room gain their trust and help them to see that I come in peace. And maybe they can just tell because there's a generational difference or whatever their hesitations are with me. Maybe they
Right.
followed me on social media and they've seen like, ugh, I think maybe we didn't vote for the same person. So now she's speaking enemy language and I don't know what I think about her. You know what? We all do it. I'm not going to sit here
Right.
and act like I don't ever get preconceived notions in my head, but I have learned that your scene partner can't surprise you if you don't give them the opportunity to do that. And then whose fault will that be? People can feel what
Yeah.
expectations you have for them. So if you come in and you're expecting the enemy, you're going to find what you look for,
Yeah,
And
I think that's
so,
a really good lesson for people to really get their hands around, right? Is your preconceived notions, whatever prejudice you walk into a room with, it's going to be an aura about you, and people are either
mhm,
going to buy into it or they're going to spend an awful lot of energy to break it down so they can get to you. The smartest thing to do is walk into a room with an open aura so people have a
mhm,
chance to come in and engage with you. So now there's a conversation. It's like walking into a room like this and blindfolded and expecting people to talk to you. It's never going to work, right? But
mhm.
if you walk into a room and not that you have to be flapping your arms out, but
Sure.
you need to be open and allow people to step to you. So when you step to them, it's not so controversial or
Mhm.
fear enticing, right? I wanted to ask you real quick about the type of people that you said are either going to get on board and go along with the change, people that are going to be resistant to change, or those that are going to not want to work with you anymore and find a new job. when it comes to the people you work with, how would you break that down from a percentage? And how would you break that down from how do you handle, obviously, the first category? They're jumping on board, they want to work with you. The ones that jump on board and are going to be problematic, what does that mean? And those that want to leave, how do you handle those?
Okay, there's a whole lot of questions all in one.
Sorry.
Percentage wise, it's different everywhere. It's different
Okay.
everywhere. I will say that it's not usually as bad as people think it is. It's often my experience that people share with me, they're concerned that 30% of their workforce is going to walk off or something. It's not the case that most clients say that to me, but what I mean is of the times that people are like, we are in a bad situation, they tend to, because there are loud rabble rousers or whatever the situation is, their perception of how big the problem is not usually reflective of once I'm talking with people or something. That one to one, people tend to be more reasonable. And even this is not a position I put myself in anymore, but for a while, I'd kind of positioned myself where I could be the one to give the feedback that nobody else wanted to give, or that no one can get through to him. And then meanwhile, I'm like, has anyone talked to you about the way such and such? No, no one said that to me. Well, they think they have. And here's what happened. They're too
Yeah,
freaking nice. They danced around it. They clouded it in all this frou-frou language. Nobody just said the thing that needed to be said.
that's so good.
It's so my point is, would I be able to give you percentages of who's going to be resistant? No, it's different at every company. The situation is different at every company. So I don't really have any even way to predict that. I do know that power erodes trust. And so if you have a leader who comes in and they are just do this or else,
Yeah.
that's a really good way to lose people's trust, even if you had it to begin with. And so there's this book, and I'm afraid I'm going to call it the wrong title because I have a couple books that are similarly titled because I was really reading a lot about servant leadership or serving leadership for a while. Are you familiar with that?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think James C. Hunter, I believe, is the author, and so he's the credit for the this idea of power erodes trust or asserting power. I might not be getting the quote exactly right, but
It's
this
okay.
idea I learned
Well,
from
the
him.
concept is I think universal, and that is if you're going to tell me what to do countless times, I never get a chance to go do it, right?
Yeah,
If
if
you're
you
going to yell
help
at
me
me, I
see
don't
the
want to go do it
why,
anyway.
yeah, if you help me see the why and there is trust here, then I might be able to get on board. So one of the questions that you had emailed me is like, what's a big problem you see in the industry? And I think one of the big things that I'm seeing right now, and maybe here's the other thing is this could totally be affirmation bias because I wrote a book that includes the subtitle Resilient Trust. So I see things about resilience pop up in my news feed
Sure.
and LinkedIn and such. And it could be because the algorithm is producing this for me. But I do see people talk about resilience and sometimes in a way that I'm like, yeesh, that's not the way that I encourage
Wasn't
people to
expecting
think
that.
about this. I don't think it's helpful, and I'm not going to call anyone out right now. I'm not going to call anyone out right now, but there is an entity that is in my life, and I'm connected with quite a few of their employees, and some of the leadership right now, they're undergoing a big change. And leadership is just asking people to be resilient. We need to be resilient.
Mhm.
Lean into the conversation. That's not a fair thing to ask people to do without transparency. If
Well, they
there's
have to
not
know why they're doing it,
trust
right?
there, yeah, there has to be
Yeah.
this level zero. This level zero is be honest
Yeah.
about harm that has been caused. Be honest about the lay of the land, right? Like people aren't stupid. One of the biggest pieces of advice I come back to, I'm curious if I started keeping a tally chart how many times a week I say this to people, but is this idea that the vast majority of people are inherently smart and good. If
Mhm.
you treat people and if you prepare for conversations like you believe that they're smart and good, and if there are deviations of that in their behavior, then that's about something. What is that about? Let me ask them about that and not just assume they're the kind of person who, whatever, you know?
There's
Like,
always something behind the curtain, right? And that's what we need to figure out as leaders and managers and all that other stuff, trying to get a team to do stuff. The one thing I love is you said, be honest about what's happened, be
mhm,
honest about what's going on right now, and be honest about what you want to have happen in the future. That way,
mhm,
everybody from different experiences, different levels of the organization could come together and say and realize, okay, this is where we've been, this is what we're going through right now, but that's the destination we have. We're going to go after that. Now we can work together. And I think that's a really powerful step. I can't believe it, but we've been talking for well over 30 minutes, which is great. But I want to finish it. We have 4 minutes left. I want to ask you one final question. And before I do that, everyone, all her information, her book, everything will be in the description down below so you get a chance to connect with Andrea because she's got a wonderful breadth of information that you can tap into. The last question for you is, I'm going to put you in a time machine. I'm going to put you on a time machine to go back, and on a park bench is sitting an 18-year-old Andrea.
Hmm.
What are you going to sit down and talk to her about?
Oh man, 18-year-old Andrea was so beautifully naive. Um, I think what I would tell 18-year-old Andrea is that it's safe for not everybody to like you. And it's safe for you to do your best and be proud of who you are,
Okay.
even if you're standing in a place of awareness about where the growing is left to do. And I think I would just really tell her to just go where the joy is.
Oh, I like
As
that.
often as she can, just go where the joy is because there's so much learning and growth, and your ability to absorb that learning and growth is so much bigger when you are in a place of joy and not a place of shame or just beating yourself up or worrying if you can ever prove to people that you deserve their love or something.
Sure. No, the Go Where the Joy is a great headline for you because everything we talk about is navigating your path from where you are to where you want to go, but finding out the players that could feed off of you and feed you the right lines so you can be successful. And I think that's really what's cool about the improv piece is it's not always about you. It's about how you interact with those around you. And that's how you create something beautiful. Andrew, I got to say, this is awesome. Thank you so much for being on the program. This was amazing. Any final words?
Well, just thank you so much for having me. I mean, I'm honored to be able to connect and share a little bit of my heart, and I hope that this is something that can be encouraging or thought-provoking for your listeners.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've already nailed that. So thank you so much. Everybody, please follow the links and get connected to Andrea because you will definitely appreciate that time with her. Everybody, see you next time in the next episode. Bye now.